Welcome to Worktapes. This is a podcast where we tear apart songs. Why was the song written? What's it about? What's the context and emotion behind it? Where were you at the time? What were you going through? How did certain lines come to you? What's the inspiration? How long did it take to write? I'm Brandon Carswell, and I'm fascinated with songwriting and how songs are built from the ground up. It's easy to hear a full production song on the radio and dismiss its origin story. I want to hear the rough draft of the song, or the worktape. I want to explore the very beginning of how songs that move us and make us move are born. Welcome to Worktapes. I'm Brandon Carswell. Today we're joined by the young Fables, Wes and Laurel. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Thanks for coming.
You said my name so good, Laurel.
Laurel?
Yeah.
Well, I remembered how you introduced it before.
Perfect.
Like Lauren with an L.
That's exactly
That's what you said.
Sometimes she gets Carl.
Carl, Laurel.
Starbucks, that's usually what they
Yeah.
call
People
you.
call you Carl?
Yeah, sometimes at Starbucks. And I'd be going there like every day. You think they would know by now.
Laurel, Carl. I don't hear it. I met you guys because I work with a nonprofit called Send Musicians to Prison, and you did a set with our crew, and it was phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
Patrick and I, your manager, got to talking in the green room, and he asked me what I did. So I mentioned the podcast, and now we're here, weeks later. That set was awesome, by the way. I hadn't heard you guys before we did that. And not only did you connect with the inmates, you just brought it. It was great. To
Thank
play
you.
a room like that is difficult
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons. We're talking like production is kind of wonky because the room is big and sounds like a gym. It's a tough crowd, literally. It's very tough to connect with.
Yeah.
You got them when you got them on a lot of levels, but especially when you brought out Prince.
Oh, yeah.
And then not only did you play Purple Rain, you played the entire solo of Purple Rain, and you nailed it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Such a
It's
such
one
a
of those.
great. Me and the crew were like, "Is he going to play the whole thing?" There's no way he's going to play the whole thing.
Oh, every time.
And then it hits a point, and he goes, "He's playing the whole thing," and it was great. You did so good.
That's such a dangerous song to play. You know, for me, I always get nervous every
Yeah.
single time because it's one of those like iconic songs and iconic guitar
Right.
songs too. You know?
Right. That performance was amazing. And I knew I wanted to talk to you guys about, there were so many stories in your songs. So for our listeners, before we get into talking about the songs, why don't you, one of you can take the lead or you can bounce off each other, whatever you do. How did you, let's go with, how did you each kind of get into music? You want to start with you?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay. And then we'll move into how you guys met and formed. That'll
Okay.
kind of flow.
Maybe I'll bring it to that point and she can take it from there. Or you can do your backstory and take it where we met. Is that cool?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. I got to check, you know. So my mom, I think the first formative thing in music that I ever had was I watched the Beatles anthology on TV when I was probably 8 or 9. And that like blew my mind and changed my life. And that was, I needed to do music from then on. But my mom bought me a guitar. I was like 13 or 14, played it as, you know, much as I could by myself. Had a couple of teachers who really helped me out. I didn't really get serious about it until I turned 18. And for me, I feel like there's a few of those formative things that pushed me in music. One was the Beatles when I was real little, Pink Floyd when I was a teenager. Then I heard Wes Montgomery, George Benson when I turned 18. And that was one of those moments. And so my background became playing jazz and fusion and things like that. I never really listened to country as a kid. And so I went to China playing jazz for a while, about half a year. And while I was over there, a friend of mine sent me a video of Glenn Campbell playing, and he takes this extended solo at the end of Galveston, and it blew my mind. And that was another formative moment. I was like, I got to play country music. And so while I was over there, I started learning and practicing, and I came back to the States. And Laurel, you take it away.
Yeah, I grew up singing country music, pretty much that's it. I loved Shania Twain and the Chicks and Patsy Cline, and I even got kicked out of a singing competition when I was 10 years old. My parents let me sing Janis Joplin, and
At a church.
yeah, at a church. So
perfect.
I got in a lot of trouble. And then when I was about 18 years old, I started really gigging a lot. I mean, I'd always kind of done like benefits and funerals and churches and all the things. And then I was probably 16 or 17, but I was 18 when I met Wes, and I needed a guitar player for a gig that my guitarist didn't show up to the rehearsal like the day before. No show, no call, no nothing. And my drummer at the time, he was like, I know this guy named Wes, and he can come and he can fill in. And I was super desperate for anybody that could just hold a guitar. So Wes
I can
showed
do
up,
that.
and he can do that for sure. So he showed up and he killed it, and we pretty much played together ever since. I mean, we played in that band for a couple of years together, and then when I decided I wanted to move to Nashville, Wes said that he wanted to be a part of that, and that's kind of how the Young Fable started.
That's great.
I'm going to brag on Laurel real quick. She doesn't want to say it, I don't think. But when she was 16, she won the Texaco Country Showdown, which is national competition. She's still the youngest to ever win. And so you won the songwriting and the performing side of it all.
Yeah, so that was an honor to sing on the Ryman stage. I remember Leanne Rhymes, she was talking to me before I sang, and she asked me a question. I said, it's such an honor to sing on this stage at such a young age. And she was like, at any age. And I was like, yeah, at any age.
How nervous were you at 16 to be on the Ryman?
I was nervous.
Yeah.
I remember like going up to the very top and just like soaking it all in before like everyone got there and before the whole thing started. And I was just like boo-hooing, just like sobbing, like, how am I here? Like, because everyone was a good like 5 years older than me in the competition too. So I just felt like, yeah, I felt really lucky.
Yeah, that place has, even if you're not performing, if you walk out onto that stage, it has like this mystery, mystic kind of magic going on.
Yeah.
It's, and just to go through, like if you are privileged enough to walk backstage and go through and look at everything, which I think you can do tours, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. But I've been back there a few times, and it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Have y'all played there?
We've done a few like private things, and I mean, yes, we have.
Yes.
But the goal is to have
our
our own show there. So.
Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. That's cool. That's fantastic. That's a great story. So you're you play together, but you're also together, right?
Yes.
So, but you could tell me if I'm wrong. You didn't start dating until after you started playing together. Is that right?
Correct.
It's about a year or so after.
Yeah. Year.
We do everything backwards.
Yeah. I don't know if that's backwards or not, but was it kind of like, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want, was it kind of touch and go? Like, I don't know if we should talk about this because we're in a band together, or were the feelings just like happening pretty?
I think the feelings were like happening, but Wes was the more mature one. He was like, we play together. Like Wes is a little bit older than me. He was like, let's not mix business and pleasure type of thing.
Yeah, because I felt like we had such a thing, and I really liked that, and I never had that before. And I was like, I don't want to mess it up. Like, if we break up or something, it's going to be bad. But you can't, hold back the inevitable.
That's right. You got to trust it and go forward. Well, that's good. It probably, I mean, I tend to think that things like that musically help you musically.
Yeah.
So when when you're really into each other, this is not like a romantic thing, but my brother, who's doing cameras today, him and I were in a band for a long time. Man. And that chemistry, when you know each other so well, is nothing like it. It sounds better. You can read each other on stage
you can
live.
Get to a deeper level too.
Yeah.
In all areas, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's almost like a telepathy at a certain point, after a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. What are the words? Somebody, like I would always forget the words.
Same.
He might shout them to me or whatever. That's how it goes. So why don't we start talking a little bit about songwriting first, and then we'll get into the song that we're going to talk about today. Are both of you very, like, do you love songwriting? Some writers don't love it. They'll do it and they're not like obsessed with it like I am. But are both of you that way? Where you just love it? It's a thing for you?
Yeah.
I think so. It for me, it was hard because like when I was a kid, I wrote songs because I felt like I had a hard time like figuring out things, so I would write songs. And then when I became more of an adult, I just played guitar for other people or whatever all the time and sort of lost that. And then when I met Laurel, it brought all that back because she would just bring songs and be like, "Hey, what do you think of this? What would you change?" And I was like, "This is like calling back to something."
Let me ask you this: how, when you were younger and you started writing, why did you start writing a song? What was the purpose?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Great question.
I think I just, as a lot of people do, it was angsty. I had to say something, but part of it was like that feeling that I couldn't find in someone else's song. I needed to sort of do it myself.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So then you, because you're such a great guitarist,
Well, I don't know about that.
you kind of fell into being a sideman.
Yeah.
Right. Which
I loved it.
There's nothing wrong with. Yeah.
Yeah.
People make a great living doing that. Would that have satisfied you?
I think it would have because I wouldn't really know the difference.
Okay.
But
now that you know the difference,
yeah,
would it have?
I don't know because there's something so magical about being able to play your own songs where it's like you are. See, I'm getting like chills even talking about it. Like you're putting yourself so far out there. Like as a sideman, you still put yourself out there, but it's to serve the song or the artist or whatever it is. It's like this is everything we've got put out there.
Yeah,
it's cool.
And Laurel, you started. Why would you have started writing songs? You started pretty young too, right?
Yeah, I was like 10, and I remember that seems crazy to write a song at 10 years old. It probably wasn't very good, but I remember my great-grandfather had passed away, and I was sitting on the couch in my childhood home with my mom. She's a great writer too, and just notes and little songs here and there. She's not necessarily a songwriter, but she's a big help in that area. And I remember like just having all these big feelings and no kind of like release. And then when we wrote the song, I was like, oh my gosh, that was like the best feeling ever. And ever since then, I mean, it's like a drug,
So it's like it's like therapeutic for you.
100%.
Even at 10 years old.
Yeah. Even at 10 years old.
You realized like this was like a release for me.
Yeah.
Dealing with the death of your grandfather.
Yeah, and it's been kind of I don't know, anytime I go through something hard, it's like, I don't know if that's because that's the reason why I wanted to write my first song, but yeah. I feel like I've always wanted to write about like harder things. Yeah. So
do you lean in like naturally to want to write a sad song or a tough song?
Probably.
Like, is it easier to write a sad song than a happy song for you?
Yeah, I feel like most artists would say that. But I'll never forget this one time. It was a few years into Wes and I dating, and we were obviously writing our songs together and doing all the things. And we were sitting in this restaurant parking lot, and we were in an argument. And he was like, you don't have to get into an argument with me every time you want to write a song. And that changed my life. Yeah, it really changed my life because I'm like, when I'm happier or going through like good times, you don't feel the need to like. Yeah. Have that release, I guess.
He wasn't willing to be Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
Yeah.
You got to write a song about everything you do.
I wasn't.
No, that really changed my life, though.
That's good. And so that kind of flows naturally into the song we're going to talk about, which is called Daddy's Girl. You guys released that in 2018 on an album called Old Songs, which is a great record. I went through and listened to as much as I had time for in the last couple of days.
Thank you.
Before we get to that song, I'll speak to musicianship and your vocal. I mean, both y'all's vocal are great, but you have like your vocal tone. Like Kent was telling you, my buddy Kent, who's here helping out today, was saying he was walking through the airport when he first saw you guys years ago, and he heard your voice. And he stopped and listened. And that's the thing, like your voice has like this calming nature to it where you want to hear it and it kind of like lets you sink in a little bit to the song,
I love that. Thank you.
And so I think that because of that, sell is not the right word, but you sell the story really well. because your voice has like this honest nature, and then you pair it with your playing, which is thought out and technical, and it's just like it's gold. It's good.
Thank
It's
you
great.
so much.
Yeah.
But Daddy's Girl, as we talk about this, it'll probably pivot into some heavier conversation, and you can talk about whatever you want, or we can take anything out. But why don't you give us like a little bit of how this song started for you?
Yeah, we were in our apartment a few minutes from here, and I remember my dad was going through some like health issues, and he was just on my mind, and I wanted to write a song for him, and kind of how special our relationship was. And it was kind of a challenging song to write, but before we started writing the song, Patrick, our manager, was like, I'm gonna come in and film you guys writing a song. So not only to write a vulnerable song, that was tough enough, but just to have cameras around you, like while you're writing a song, was a first for the both of us, I think. But yeah, I mean, that song is just a song about me and my daddy, and also about my sister and her daddy. And I think anybody who's a daddy's girl or who has a daddy's girl can somewhat relate to Daddy's Girl.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's cool, and we're going to get into this in a few minutes, is what you just said about the filming of the writing of that song, the writing process. I watched that film, and it was super interesting to watch. I forget the other writer's name, so you'll have to tell me.
Dean Fields.
Okay, so it was you guys, you two, Patrick, your manager, and Dean. And the part I liked a lot was right at the top, where because there's so many co-writes you walk into, and you have no idea what's going to happen. You all have a different idea of like, who's going to bring the idea, who's going to start. And it could be somebody's like, oh, I've got an idea. And then you just like steamroll them, and you're like, no, I got this. And it wasn't quite like that, but it was very apparent that you were going to write the song in the room. Like whatever came in, okay, we're going to tackle this. And it was yours. You're like, my dad's going through this stuff. I need to get this out. Okay, well, let's talk about it. And then you just start talking, and then you find a line, and then you start building it. And it took a few days, but you landed the whole song. And it's so cool to watch. And we'll have Patrick talk about it in a few minutes, about the film and where you can watch it and all of that. But what's really cool, and you can speak to this as well, is that you pulled your dad in on the process. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, Dean kept asking me, like, we were struggling to try to get some of the verses out, and he just was like, tell me a real story about you and your dad, or, and I was like, well, let's just call my dad. So I called him, and I'm like, tell a story about me when I was little, or what's so special between us, or whatever. And through half the conversation, he didn't even know I was talking to him. He was doing something else, had me on speakerphone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're sitting here trying to write a song for you.
Yeah.
But that's just like, we talked so much, and our relationship was so special. So pulling him in, just even calling him and having that kind of footage to look back on is like super special for me.
Yeah.
And, even whenever he was talking about, I think we talked about going to the grocery store together or something, and Dean's like, you can't put that in a song. Or I think I said that, and he was like, well, if you want a songy song, then maybe not, but if that's your story, then that's your story, you know? So we finally got to the words we wanted to say, but I think it was through those conversations I had with my dad.
Yeah. What's a songy song? What does that mean?
I don't know.
For our listener.
Like,
I always think, I think of that sometimes, and especially I think of Dean because he's such a great songwriter.
Such a great writer.
And he can write any song ever. I think what he means by that is like, sometimes you write a song and you're trying to write a song,
Yeah.
And sometimes you write a song because you have to get something out.
Right.
That's what I think.
So the song you may go in and go, we're trying to write like a pop song. We're trying to write something for radio. We're trying to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
But instead, sometimes, to your point, a different thing comes out of your heart. And it doesn't, and all of those things go away.
Yeah.
Like the radio spots, the singles, whatever, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
You've landed on a good subject, topic, content, music. You feel the heart of it, and it's like a thing. even if you just wrote it for yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't know that in the moment if you're going to put it on a record or not, whatever. But my argument to that is those songs are more important than trying to write for pop. Because what's happened with this song now is, you've made a whole film off of it, but you're connecting with people. Like obviously I'm not going to know what it's like to be a daddy's girl. But I understand the concept and I can relate it to, my relationship with my mom or my dad or whatever loss or suffering I've experienced, and knowing your story and what you've been through in such a short amount of time at that time, and then connecting with people all over the world and going, hey, you're not alone. And I think if that song didn't happen like that the rest of the story might have been a little more difficult.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's we'll listen to the work tape right now, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the song. Cool. Awesome.
Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Mama said when I was 1 day old, the whole world changed for him. He never drove that slow. Left on Cabot Drive, 5th house on the right. He took me in his arms and I was home. He gave me the best years of my life. I must have took a few from him, 'cause I was not an easy child. I made mistakes, made them again, but it never changed a thing for him. 'Cause he knows who I am and I'm not sure if I'm anything in the world. I'm Daddy's girl. I can't stand cigarettes and I hate the cold, but I'm freezing on the front porch, 'cause that's where Daddy smokes, where he was waiting up for my curfew come and gone. A little angry, mainly happy I was home. He gave me the best years of my life. Must have took a few from him, 'cause I was not an easy child. I made mistakes, made them again, but it never changed a thing for him. 'Cause he knows who I am and I'm not sure if I'm anything in the world. I'm Daddy's girl. Daddy's girl tells him everything. Daddy's girl can ask for anything. Daddy's girl makes him cry every time she sings. He gave me the best years of my life. I must have took a few from him, 'cause I was not an easy child. I made mistakes, made them again, but it never changed a thing for him. 'Cause he knows who I am and I'm not sure if I'm anything in the world. Daddy's girl. If I'm anything in the world, I'm Daddy's girl. It's really good.
Yeah, I love it. Now that's a song.
Like I said, this is a super interesting process to watch. So you should definitely check the film out if you haven't already. And it's cool to listen to, actually. I just did an episode with someone else, and it kind of had a similar, it was him and his wife writing songs, and we could hear their kids in the background, and they're just bouncing ideas. And a lot of times the work tapes I get for this are just, and they're great, but they're the voice memo the second you finish the full idea.
Yeah.
And that's super cool to hear. I love that. But to listen to the process of talking back and forth and figuring out which ideas work and which don't, and being cool with saying no to an
Yeah.
idea. I always intro a co-write with, hey, no one's going to hurt anybody's feelings in here. Just say no. We're trying to write the best thing we can.
Yeah.
So if a line is dumb, that's fine, but no ideas are dumb.
Right.
How does, you've kind of touched on this, Laurel, but how does songwriting assist you in your, I'll say, in your suffering? You mentioned it was kind of therapeutic as a kid, and I assume it's still therapeutic, but can you like expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's changed throughout the years, I guess. I used to do it just for me, and I feel like a big part of it is still doing it just for me, but now that we've built this whole thing, me, Wes, and Patrick, and just kind of have this platform, it's almost like there's a bigger calling.
Yeah.
I think like I grieved hard for 5 years, like really hard. And it's only been like the last 2 or 3 years that I've kind of come out of that just a little bit. But it's more like what you said, letting other people know that they're not alone. Like I'd never felt more alone than I had when I was going through that really hard time of losing my family. So I think just being vulnerable and just letting people know that, we're all human and we all go through the same stuff. I really do think that makes a difference. So I feel like that's part of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I think that's great. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say, maybe if you're okay with it, just so people who don't know your story and how it follows sort of Daddy's Girl, maybe tell about the things that happened after.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
We wrote Daddy's Girl, and then a few months after we wrote Daddy's Girl, my sister died. I talked about her a little earlier. Her name was Lindy, and she was 19, and she passed away in a car accident about a mile from where I grew up, and completely changed my life. It changed my parents' life, and it changed the song. The song's about me and my dad, but also about Lindy and her dad. And so Patrick kept filming, and we had all this crazy footage, and my parents like opened up about the loss of their child in front of a camera, and it's insane that we have this. We didn't even know what this was going to be at that point. And then about 8 months after my sister died, my dad passed away. So it was definitely a wild 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much, too fast.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah. And so if you hadn't have had the gift of writing songs during that 8 months or after.
Yeah. I mean, my sister struggled with addiction pretty hard. And so I think just her not having an outlet kind of showed me that like I do have one, and I feel very lucky to have that, because not everybody does. So yeah, I think it would have been a lot different.
Right. And now you have a platform that you're building, and you're able to say, which I appreciate that you're so open about it. First of all, thanks for sharing that. And you're pretty open on social media about mental health, depression, whatever you're going through, anxiety, and telling people they're not by themselves is huge. And I think that I've dealt with that in my own personal life. It's important to talk about. It's hard to talk about. It makes you feel like, oh, no one else is really dealing with this, right? Because I just need to keep it under wraps and pretend everything's okay. But when you're honest about it and you're giving, you're also releasing for you, and you're helping someone else. I've told a million people, I feel like when you're going through the depths, the person you should pay the least amount of attention to some degree is yourself. Go help somebody else. Go do, and then you'll start to be like, oh, that's what this is about. That's why this is happening.
Yeah. It's that community, like
Yes.
human connection type thing.
Obviously work on yourself and do what you can, but you can't do it all.
Yeah.
That's why you need other people, and you pull in, you help, let them help you. And that's what I appreciate about your story and sharing it. I was able to watch it live in granted a unique situation or setting in a prison, and watching the inmates just get super emotional, and you were connecting with them, and it was great. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
So you're doing that whether you see it or not,
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
And it's like being in prison or not being in prison, we all feel and go through very, very, very similar things.
Exactly.
It just looks different.
Right.
Sometimes.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like you feel so alone when you're in it. If if you can get out and see that people feel the same way, even though everybody's story is different,
Right.
we all go through that. And like the prison show, that's a show that we will remember forever because it was such a strong connection. And we would do these shows, and sometimes we still do called screenplay tour, and we'd play the movie and do a show. And after those shows, I'm telling you, every single person in the audience would tell a story.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, it's powerful.
It is. It's heavy too,
Yeah, it's really heavy.
because you're realizing how many people you're affecting, and you can't physically talk to all of them, and you want to.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to hug like every
Yeah.
single person's neck.
Right. And for our audience, that Send Musicians to Prison, pieces of that show will be on YouTube at some point soon. So you can check that out. I'll try, once it comes out, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Cool. Well, let's pivot over to talking about the film. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll intro Patrick, the young Fables manager, and you can just say, speak to some points about how the film was made and your ideas about it.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I've always learned is like listen to your audience.
Right. Yeah.
As a manager trying to promote or raise awareness of a band. And one of the things that I noticed people were asking is like, how do they write a song? How do they write a song? And it struck me like lightning almost. Like in Nashville, we take for granted that like everybody knows what a co-write is like because this is like the co-writing capital of the world.
Yeah.
But when you really break it down, 99% of the world's population is like, how does somebody go from a silent room
Yeah.
to having a song? Like,
We're in like a bubble over here.
Yeah.
We know that like there's co-writes that are like 21 writers on it.
writing
That blows my mind. I can't.
3 times a day.
I don't want to be on that one.
yeah, exactly.
Or I probably do actually.
And so I tried to think back at like a reference of, where can somebody like watch a songwrite happen?
Yeah.
And I realized that I really couldn't find one. So I thought, hey, for our mailing list, why don't we film a co-write? And then we'll just make it an exclusive video and share it. If anybody wants to sign the mailing list, then, they can see what a co-write looks like. Obviously having no idea what, ball we had started rolling down a hill. I mean, the way that it changed and moved. But to watch a song like that come together was pretty incredible. And, that was a project that I said, was just supposed to be a simple, bait for a mailing list or something like that. It was going to be a 5-minute YouTube piece. After they finished writing it, we were like, oh, wow, that's going to be fast forwarded to this record. So what if we record the recording process as well and show them how it actually goes from silent room to actually being on a record?
Yeah.
And so we kind of kept extending this filming process. If I knew it was going to become a documentary, I probably would have came with a nicer camera
Right.
or tried to hold the thing steady or something,
It looks great.
It was just raw footage, But, then after her sister died, a part of me just trying to be compassionate was like, hey, maybe we don't even put any of this out or anything. And Laurel was, brave enough to say, hey, maybe this is about a bigger purpose. Maybe it's about parents losing a family member. My parents would be willing to talk to you about it. Maybe there's a purpose in this thing, So, I went out and interviewed Ron and her mother, Ron being her father, for anybody who doesn't know, interviewed the parents. And I think it was 14 days before Ron died was that last interview. So essentially we kind of have his last thoughts and concerns and, his mental landscape on film, which was pretty incredible. And then after Ron had passed, it was, as a guy who didn't think I was recording a motion picture, not a motion picture, but a feature length movie, I realized that we had a responsibility to kind of tell a story because I don't think those circumstances were handed to us for no reason.
Yeah. And it speaks to like the beauty of running with an idea that you have, because I've thought about, like filming like a co-write before, but like I said, when you first walk in, nobody's thinking this is going to be anything special. It's just we're getting together to write. And so to set up cameras, like to your point earlier, it's kind of intimidating, and it kind of can make you like hide back a little bit, and maybe you're not giving your best in the right. But I appreciate that you kind of push that forward, because, you know, look what happened. You know, like you were able to capture her father's like last week's or whatever, you know, in life. And that's like invaluable, like just for her family's sake.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you can't, that wouldn't have happened if you didn't push that a little bit. And,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think as the process went along, you know, we're trying careful not to feel like we were capitalizing on like this anguish and sorrow and tragedy and everything. And so, you know, I think I've went to Laurel and Wes a couple times, just like, at any point you want to abandon this thing, like, do not worry about the time we put into it or whatever. Like it's gone, you know, maybe there'll be some time in the future that it makes sense. But I think, you know, it's a testament to Laurel and Wes at how open they've been, you know, that platform that you had mentioned earlier, that, you know, when you hear Laurel's voice or something about it, it doesn't feel performative.
Right.
Although their performance is so incredible. But, you know, I grew up listening to James Taylor, and I feel like his voice is so disarming that his lyrics the story just comes out easy, because it feels like they're talking, just whispering in your ear.
Yeah.
And I think that's a quality that Laurel has, that her voice is set up in a way that makes it very conducive to telling a story. And so the fact that she writes so earnestly, it's a great combo.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like you said, bringing in the musicianship of Wes behind it, such an incredible combination. But that being kind of the basis of this whole thing, I think that the fact that she writes, I think the bio says something like, they write about things that are typically saved for the therapist couch. And I think that's a great, you know, a great way to say that, you know, you have this, boy, it's tough to describe, but you have kind of this gold combination, and then you inject it with this thing where everybody, the content is something that we all need to hear. And so it's received really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of the Young Fables.
Yeah, for sure. And where can people watch the film?
So the film just recently finally hit Amazon Prime. So a simple Google of the Young Fables, or the name of the movie is The Fable of a Song.
Okay.
So The Fable of a Song, Amazon Prime will get you right there, or you can just go to theyoungfables.com and there's links everywhere.
Great. Awesome. Last question for both of you. And you're welcome to chime in on this too, Patrick. I'll start with Wes.
All right.
Everyone gets the same question, so you guys get the benefit of thinking about your answer. You can listen to one record again as if it's the first time you've ever heard it.
Oh
Oh my
man,
gosh.
that is a good one. First time ever heard it.
It can't be your own.
That would be funny. Man, I think it would be Randy Newman's songbook,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a
Like-
good answer.
where it's just him and playing piano and singing his songs. And it's like to me, like, he's such a great writer. And it's almost the opposite of what you guys were just talking about, where it's like people have a hard time getting past his voice. But I think it makes him so, like, vulnerable. Like, you listen to a song like Feels Like Home. Bonnie Raitt does it, and other people do it. A beautiful song. When you hear Randy do it, it's such a, like, man, this is a dude who is insecure and feels like he doesn't have a place in the world. It's like such a different thing. And when you break it down, that album is just him and piano. When you break it down to that, it's even more so.
Yeah. Great answer. Laurel?
Okay. I can't think of the album name, but it's I feel like I'm in and out and all over the place, so my mind could change tomorrow. But right now it's Maddie Diaz's current album. Like, I don't feel like there's one clunker on that record.
Okay.
And I love her songwriting, and I aspire to be as wonderful as she is one day. So
Killer. What kind of stuff does she do?
It's like, I don't know, what would you say, Patrick? Like singer, songwriter.
It's like a singer-songwriter thing, but then it just kind of touched the new production world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the production's great. She sings great. She's vulnerable and just honest with the way she tells a story and her words on top of it. I don't know. I love her.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll look it up. What about you, Patrick?
Well, this is interesting. You said you can't pick your own record. The Fables are not. I'm not the Fables, right?
Okay.
And I know this sounds like, like the straight, manager, type of record, but I have a reason why I would say any of the Young Fables records. Because you said hearing it for the first time. I think the one experience that a songwriter never gets is they're literally the only person on the planet that never gets the experience of hearing a finished record for the first time.
That's a great point.
Because they wrote it, they know all the binding agents, all the writing of it, the acoustic demos and everything, and it becomes this thing. But to be able to be hit with your record with like no prior memory or experience with it, I think would be such an incredible experience. And I've dumped a lot of time into these guys, so I would love to know what it sounds like the very first time, just a complete project. I think any of their records would be an interesting experience for me.
That's great. Well, Wes, Laurel, Patrick, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for doing this.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
It's fun to talk to you guys. Do you want to, where can everybody find you?
TheYoungFables.com.
Cool. Worktapes is produced by me, Brandon Carswell. This episode was filmed and edited by Sean Carswell. Don't forget to like and subscribe everywhere you listen to Worktapes.